Well, folks, good news. The New York Times has found somebody to solve the masculinity crisis, and it's a feminist lady. Now, modern masculinity does have a problem. More men than ever committing suicide, more men than ever addicted to opioids, more men than ever not going to college, lots of depression. Men are falling behind women in a wide variety of areas. Now, the real reason for that is because men have been deprived of their traditional roles or have deprived themselves of their traditional roles. The traditional role of a male is to provide and protect a family, which means get married, have kids, protect, defend, provide. That's what men did, and it gave them purpose, and it gave them meaning. And then we built an entire society around the idea that this was actively bad, that there was a serious problem with doing this thing. And thus, society has sort of fallen apart. Now, in order to achieve this thing, it doesn't mean that women have to be tertiary or secondary or be treated as slaves or anything remotely like that, which is what feminism argued. That's an idiotic assumption. Marriage was always good for women. It remains good for women, just as it is good for men. Women can work. My wife is, as I've mentioned many, many times, is a doctor. There's nothing wrong with that. She does recognize that her primary responsibility lies in the family. But my primary responsibility also relies in the family. We just don't provide in exactly the same way for the family. In fact, what the statistics tend to show is that women are happiest married, working part-time, taking care of kids part-time, which is why women tend to work fewer hours than men, which is why there tends to be a pay differential on average between men and women. However, there's a whole school of thought that basically says that the big problem with masculinity is just masculinity, and that the solution to masculinity is to basically trash it, that all men would be happier as androgynous widgets. The person who's now pushing this is apparently a person named Caitlin Moran. The New York Times has an entire article titled, "Modern Masculinity is Broken. She Knows How to Fix It." Now, what would make you think that Caitlin Moran knows how to fix masculinity? I have no idea what would make you think that Caitlin Moran knows how to fix masculinity. This is a person who is best known for writing a satirical Friday column for the Times called Celebrity Watch. She's been columnist of the year a few times. She is, she's married with a couple of kids. That's pretty much it. She is a self-described feminist. She talks about feminism all the time. Her idea of what men need is particularly ridiculous. But according to the New York Times, she's the expert on masculinity. Quote, with the arrival of her part memoir, part manifesto, How to Be a Woman in 2011, Caitlin Moran established herself as one of her generation's funniest and most fearless feminist voices. I always love when people use the word fearless, because usually it just means that they're repeating nostrums that the left really, really likes. That's what makes you fearless. Moran, who is 48 and who first made her mark in the early 1990s as a wunderkind music journalist for British publications, has published 4 ribald and emotionally honest books of nonfiction. Oh, emotionally honest books. Those are my favorite. As opposed to emotionally dishonest books. Those are terrible. And 2 novels, and has continued to work as a columnist at the Times of London. Now with her new book, What About Men? She turns her eyes to what she sees as the limited and limiting discussions around modern masculinity. So what exactly is it about men that needs fixing? She says, apparently, I'm a mainstream writer. If I'm going to start talking about a difficult idea, I want to approach it in the most successful way possible. You need to start with a generalization that is going to get people to go either, yes, I recognize that in myself, or no, I don't agree. So what exactly is her generalization? According to the New York Times reporter interviewing her, quote, men are obsessed with band t-shirts and emotionally inarticulate and constantly talking about their balls. Okay, well, if that's how you perceive men, is that that's all men are, then naturally you think that masculinity is bad. If the way that you perceive men is that men are also soldiers and firefighters and fathers and brothers and providers and protectors, that kind of changes things, doesn't it? We all have a lot on our schedules with how much we have to do every day. We've got soccer practice, science fairs, prepping for the holidays, got to pick up my kids, all the rest of it. The good news is you can take a big thing off your plate by putting great meat on your plate with Good Ranchers. You care about what your family eats? Well, good news. So do the folks over at Good Ranchers. That's why they've spent years building relationships with local farms to source the best 100% American beef, chicken, pork, and now wild-caught seafood as well. The best of the land and sea. You can now get conveniently delivered to your door. Right now, they're offering 2 years of free ground beef to anybody who subscribes. That is a $480 value. That is 2 years of free, high-quality ground beef and a locked-in price. No other meat company guarantees you 100% American meat and a locked-in price. That's because no one else is Good Ranchers. You can save on your beef, chicken, and pork, locking in your price today. Every single steakhouse quality cut is individually wrapped and flash frozen to make mealtime easy. Go to goodranchers.com today. Use code BEN for $25 off and free ground beef for 2 years. Remember, subscribe to any box to lock in your price on America's best meat for 2 whole years as well. That is goodranchers.com today. Use my code BEN. Get over $500 in savings. Subscribe to Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. You know a company is looking out for you when they actually upgrade your service and don't charge you for it. That's great news for new and current Pure Talk customers. Pure Talk just added data to every plan, and they include a mobile hotspot with no price increase whatsoever. If you've considered Pure Talk before, but you haven't actually made the switch, it's time to take a look again. For just $20 a month, you'll get unlimited talk, text, and now 50% more 5G data plus their new mobile hotspot. This is why I love Pure Talk. They are veteran-owned. They only hire the best customer service team located right here in the United States of America. Most families are saving almost $1,000 a year while enjoying the most dependable 5G network in America. Remember, you vote with how you spend your cash, so stop supporting those woke wireless companies that actually hate your guts. Instead, go to puretalk.com/Shapiro. You'll save an additional 50% off your very first month of coverage because they actually value you. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro. Pure Talk is wireless for Americans by Americans. I've been using Pure Talk myself. Their network is great. My calls come in crystal clear. puretalk.com/Shapiro. Get the same cell phone coverage I have, and you save an additional 50% off your very first month of coverage. That is puretalk.com/Shapiro. Once more, puretalk.com/Shapiro. She says, apparently, feminism has a stated objective, which is the political, social, sexual, and economic equality of women. With men, there isn't an objective or an aim. Because there isn't, what I have observed is that the stuff that is getting the most currency is on the conservative side. Men going, our lives have gotten materially worse since women started asking for equality. We need to reset the clock. We need to have power over women again. Well, actually, many of us are just saying that life has gotten materially worse for both men and women since the rise of feminism, which is clearly true. So what should the future look like for men? This genius says, quote, it feels that every so often a book about men comes out and a small conversation flares up, and the conclusion usually is, it's a thing you should sort out yourselves, men. There's no sense of a continuing conversation, of there being a new pantheon of men being invented all the time. In the male conversation, it doesn't feel like something that spreads out across other genres. It sort of happens in isolation. So she never answers the question as to what society should look like for men. Now, what should society not look like for men? Apparently, it shouldn't be Jordan Peterson. She made fun of Jordan Peterson because Jordan Peterson got emotionally vulnerable during one of his podcasts talking about the challenges that men face. And then she made fun of him. She said, an incredibly successful man whom I see as being very merciless and pitiless to women, suddenly boo-hooing and crying when women with comparable levels of fame and pressure would never think about talking about it like that in public. I dislike that disparity. You're right. Powerful women never cry in public, ever. Sure. But eventually she does get to this idea of what men ought to be. So what should men be? They should be post-gender. Women should be very women, but men should be post-gender. She says, I can walk around leafy, liberal North London and see boys in dresses with nail polish who are using mixed pronouns and go, look at the progress here. On the other hand, as soon as I go back to my hometown, I'm not seeing boys walking around in sarongs and using mixed pronouns. In these places, you'd be going straight into the deep end by starting a conversation about masculinity by going, maybe gender shouldn't exist. It's better to start, which is why I've been general in this book, with a sketch of masculinity that people in normal towns who haven't gone to amazing schools and don't read fancy books would recognize. Then you can lead into, hey, why don't we all be David Bowie? Why don't we all be David Bowie? Because David Bowie is non-replicable. Because David Bowie, stooped everything in sight for 30 years. Why would your model as a man be David Bowie? I'm just wondering. There are many better models of male virtue than David Bowie. Why is he the ideal? I'm just seriously, I don't understand why. Why? Why? I understand that you like him as a celebrity, but what does that have to do with the model man? The model man is going to be what? An androgynous rock star? How? Explain. It's a hot take. But again, this is what the New York Times thinks the solution for men is to just ditch masculinity. Now, the real solution for men is to live virtuously. And you know what the real solution for women is? To also live virtuously. I know this is really tough stuff. The reality is the solution for men is very basic. Get a skill set so that you can provide. Develop a value system so you can protect. Make sure that you are ensconced in a community that shares that value system. Marry a spouse that shares that value system. Raise children. Build society. Build the little platoon in society that supports civilization. Live the values that you espouse. That's a good life for a man. That's a mission for a man. The mission is not be David Bowie, but that's what the left wants. And then they're wondering, why are men so depressed? Why are men so depressed? Well, because you've said that the only way they can be a real man is to not be a man at all. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.